With whom are thoughts? Or whom do we love to converse? Who has our warmest affections and our best energies? Who? Now I know all of you, saints here in the room, we all will give me the right answer. But this is not what she's searching for here, and what she's sharing. She's asking us to look at our hearts and being real between us and God. If we are Christ, our thoughts are with Him. And our sweetest thoughts are of Him. All we have and are is consecrated to Him. We long to bear His image, breathe His Spirit, do His will, and please Him in all things. Steps to Christ, page 58. Can we say that? Sometimes even I can get very busy in doing ministry and a variety of different things, but can I even say this to myself every day? At the end of every day, I can almost use this as an evaluation as, how has my day been? Have I fulfilled this today? Some days I wonder, have I fulfilled all of it? Well, let's turn to our Bibles in Mark chapter 3. Mark chapter 3, we're going to be starting with verse 13. It says, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to Him those He wanted. And they came. He appointed 12 that they might be with Him and that He might send them out to preach and to have authority to drive out demons. So Mark chapter 3, 13 through 15 shares with us this idea that Jesus Christ was an example for us. We find this reinforced in Matthew chapter 20, verse 28, that Jesus calls us to be with Him. And He was an example for us. And why He wants us to be with Him? Because when we're with Him, we're better able to model what He was sharing with us. You know, it's easy to have me tell you or anyone. My parents would tell me all kinds of things that was supposed to be good. And it was. I didn't think it was at the time. It's like, do I have to take out the trash? Anyone can take out the trash. Why do I have to be the one to take out the trash? Or, Dad, why do I have to clean the car this way? Why do I have to use the wax on, wax off method? Can't I just use a brush? He had His way, and He wanted me to understand a way of doing things very well. But He could have told me, I remember even this. He tried to tell me how to drive. He goes, okay, so what you got to do, this is a clutch, this is the stick shift, and you push your foot, do all the workings, right? Do you think I could drive the next moment? Did any of you drive when your mom or dad told you that? If you had to ever work a stick shift and they just told you a little bit more depth than what I just gave you, but just told you how and that's it. And then they say, go ahead, get in the car and go. No, none of us could. What do we have to do? I had to get in the car with my dad. He had to show me, walking me through each step of what he told me, and he's physically showing me. And then he goes, now it's your turn. Now my heart's going boom, 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 because now I can wreck the car, and that's scary, because that's my life on the line. And so I get in that side, and then I start to try to practice what he showed me, and I messed up a few times, and then I started getting it right, and I started getting better and better and better. But because my dad modeled it for me, he helped me in walking with him. I was able to understand better, and I got the hang of it. I learned and I grew, and guess what? I could teach someone today how to drive if I needed to. Jesus shared with us the same thing. And he also said that so he might send us out to preach, to share. Because it's one thing to spend time with God and to get all this good information, but then if that's all we do with it and we put it in a storehouse, then what good is it? It's about taking it in, but then passing it on. Jesus didn't just take the time he spent with his Father and just hoard it to himself and say, it's mine, mine, mine. He gives them the energy to pass it on, to share it to a world. And you know what? He passed it on. He knew he couldn't share it to 50,000 people all at once, so he shared it to 12. And that 12 was to multiply and expand, to share it to more. They were to invite the people to disciple with them. Then we had apostles, and we had disciples, and we had an organization that was to be empowered to unleash the potential in people to allow Jesus' message to go out to the world. And that message has never stopped, even to this day. So do all that through the power of the Holy Spirit. He didn't leave them on their own to just figure it all out. They had the Holy Spirit to drive them and to help them. John Calvin reaffirms this in us in what he says here. He says, we are responsible to use our time wisely to make progress in both understanding and in living the Christian life. So in understanding Christian truth and in living the Christian life. But he also says this, and you can read it here on the screen. We are further reminded that it is the duty of everyone to impart the knowledge he has to his brethren, so that no one is to retain what he knows to himself, but to communicate it to the edification or growing up or development of another. So, okay, preacher, I've shared all this stuff. I've talked about all these things. So what's the results of doing this? I mean, so what? What does it really matter if I do all these things and I go out and I live what you're telling me and what the Bible is sharing with us? Well, look at what happened in the early church. In Acts chapter 2, we see different examples, many throughout the whole Bible. But first off here, in Acts chapter 2, verse 41, it says after the first day of ministry that they were unleashed with the Holy Spirit, how many came to Christ? Now, if they kept everything that was shared with them in that little storehouse or that little box and never shared it, would they have been able to baptize 3,000 people? To have 3,000 people come to Christ that day? No. Jesus Christ unleashed them. And we need to see that in each other, that we can also be this type of church that unleashes. Later on, we find that this didn't end just with this story. A few years later, a whole community came out because they said this. They said, these who have turned the world upside down have come here too. Or have come here too. So they have come here too, sharing that same message, and they didn't want it. They wanted to reject it. They're going, wait a minute, that's changing how we live life. That's changing how I do things. And this isn't good. I like the way I do things. I don't want to change. And so the people tried to reject these disciples. Now we're going out to the world, doing what God has called them to do. There was a seminarian, a friend of mine that was going to seminary. His name was Freddie. And he got a call from a conference, meaning he received a call that a church said, community had said that we wanted to invite you to pastor our community. And he thought about it, and he goes, I don't feel the placement is suited to my abilities. And so one of his friends, after all the complaining that he was sharing about all the different things that he just didn't see him fitting, he goes, the world's a better place because Michelangelo didn't say, I don't do ceilings. And I thought about that when I heard that statement, and I was thinking, that's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. I mean, wow, what if we do the same thing? If we are going to be faithful to the ministry of God, do I say I just don't do that or don't do this? But if I'm going to be faithful really to God's calling, it's about really understanding what that's saying. I mean, really, when you think about it, what if Martin Luther says, I don't do doors? Or John Wesley said, I don't preach in the fields. Or later on, we even have Rahab saying that I don't do enemy spies. Or you have Ruth, I don't do mother-in-laws. Can you imagine, would this world's better place because Ruth didn't say, I don't do mother-in-laws? Let's continue on. What about Samuel and saying, I don't do mornings? Imagine what would happen if he said that. Or even David saying, you know what, guys, I don't do giants. That's just not my thing. Or later on with Peter, I don't do Gentiles. If we continue on, what if John saying, I don't do deserts? What about Mary? And what if she said, I don't do virgin births? Or later on with Paul saying, I don't do correspondence. Since most of the New Testament is written by Paul, because it's all correspondence and letters. Can you imagine what kind of Bible? It'd be a lot smaller. But look at all the things we'd be missing if he'd said that. What about Mary Magdalene saying, I don't do feet? And what about this one? If Jesus says, I don't do crosses.